Okay, so let's talk about those two lines. I mentioned that movies are a form of thinking. That movies have ideas, and that those ideas get discussed and talked out and thought. The director's using the movie to think through ideas. And obviously the main characters are going to be the main voice pieces, that's not a word, but they're going to be the main representatives of those ideas. So if Sunset Boulevard is a movie about how badly Hollywood treats women, particularly as they get older, and again, sunset means to get older, to end, then one thing smart movies will do, and of course the main character is going to be about that, but one thing smart movies will do is that, and this is something Shakespeare does really well, is that if the movie is really thinking about an idea, it will show up in lots of different places in the movie because any other characters could be a chance to continue along the idea. So if you just have some kind of random story that has nothing to do with anything and it's just there to make the kids laugh, that's a dumb movie. But like if the little details in the movie tie into what the movie's about, you're looking at something smarter. That's exactly what happens in Sunset Boulevard. Is if the, because it's a if I'm right about this, it's a movie about it's not just a movie about Norma Desmond, who's one person, but she's representative of the way that Hollywood chews up and spits out women, and the way Hollywood treats women like they're useless when they become older. You see that in these two lines. Joe Gillis says he wants to go to a party where the girls are young enough to believe what the casting agents say. Well, what the casting agents say, he doesn't say this out loud, you have to kind of know this. What the casting agents say is they say, hey baby, if you sleep with me, I will put you in this movie and make you a star. And then the casting agents who were all men in 1950, or mostly men in 1950, and probably mostly men today. But the idea is the casting agents will use beautiful young girls for sex and make them promises and not fulfill the promises. And you have to be young, because if you've been in Hollywood long enough, you realize these guys are lying to you for sex. But of course, Hollywood has new crops of young women coming in all the time that they can kind of, extort, basically, for sex in this way. When he shows up at the party, Artie is joking about, hey, mysterious Gillis, where have you been? Smuggling uranium? Are you the Black Dahlia killer? The Black Dahlia killer, Black Dahlia, some of my students know this because they love serial killer shit. But the Black Dahlia was a real murder that occurred in Hollywood in the 40s. And it was a young woman, who wanted to be an actress in Hollywood. And she went to auditions, and and she not very successful. And someone, we still don't know who, murdered her, cut her in half, like this way, across the belly, and left those two pieces in an abandoned alley, in like an empty lot in Los Angeles. And it was the way she was killed was so. I think some of her internal organs were scooped out too. It was really bad. But it was like a big dramatic story that everybody was talking about in Hollywood. There's actually a movie about it called Black Dahlia that Brian De Palma made. It's not my favorite movie, but it's interesting. It's got Scarlett Johansson in it, and it's pretty fun. But it's trashy. Brian De Palma, I don't know. He's got good stuff, but he's mostly tragic. What's interesting about the point is that why does Billy Wilder put these two right real quick? I want to go to a party where the girls are young enough to believe the casting directors, and I want to go to and hey man, are you the Black Dahlia killer? These two little throwaway blink and you'll miss them lines tie directly into the theme of the movie, because these are both examples of how Hollywood uses and abuses young women who want to be actresses. It uses them up and it destroys them and it fucks them up. So it ties in. Norma Desmond is one bad thing that can happen to an actress. You're amazing and famous, and then Hollywood's like, we don't need you anymore because you're too old. And 50's not that old. I'm 41. But the Black Dahlia, wanted to be an actress, ends up being a murder victim. The girl's young enough to believe the casting directors. It's this, like the way Hollywood uses and abuses women and throws them away. So it ties directly into the larger themes of the movies. Okay, cool. We're doing good. All right, let's keep going through this. So He goes to the party and he flirts. Betty Schaefer makes a comeback. Again, it's important. We establish Betty Schaefer. If Betty Schaefer is going to be important in the movie, she can't show up here. That's why she's in Act 1, and then he sees her again in Act 2, and they flirt in the bathroom. And the way they flirt is cute. They're quoting old movie lines at each other because they both know movies really well. But they know the same movies, and so they flirt with each other by quoting movies that young people know. Notice, by the way, the whole idea of quoting is these movies all have talking in them. Norma Desmond wouldn't know any of this because she wouldn't watch a talkie because that's beneath her. But the idea is that Betty Schaefer and Joe Gillis are from the same generation, roughly speaking, and so they watch the same movies. Whereas Norma Desmond doesn't watch modern day movies. She's a little out of touch in her big fancy castle. All right, cool. And then Max, who's such a drama queen, he calls Max to say, send my stuff over. And then Max says, he gives this big announcement that, she's tried to commit suicide with your razor that you left here. Guilt trip on Joe Gillis, like it's his fault. And he rushes off because he feels terrible. I mean, because it's not that he doesn't like Norma Desmond. I mean, first of all, who wouldn't like Norma Desmond? She's fucking rad. But he feels terribly guilty about the fact that he left a razor there, and he knew she had suicide issues. That was the whole point about the doorknobs, was it lets you know that she's suicidal sometimes because, she's been treated like crap. And he rushes off to see her, and to kind of, because he feels terrible. There's a great detail, too, that Max says, we have to keep it from the musicians. Those guys don't care, but she's all about keeping up appearances, even for the people who work for her. And so he would go up the stairs slowly so the musicians don't find out that anything's wrong. And again, you see that claw, right? She talks to him, and she puts her hands up by her head because she's in so much pain. But it's also to emphasize those bandages on her wrist. She's so dramatic. She's going to make sure that he sees those bandages. She's not going to hide them. That's her mark of how much she loves him. And then it becomes midnight, and traditionally at midnight people kiss. And you see the claw. She kind of comes. She's got a claw on her back, and she pulls him in for that kiss. When he goes to kiss her, she kind of pulls him in. And that's a huge transition in the movie, because that's the point in the movie at which Joe Gillis, who's had his masculinity and his freedom taken from her in exchange for money, he gives in. And he's like, you know what? I accept this. He was trying to resist this part of his life. That's why he stormed out. And he says, you know what? I accept that this is who I am. And he's now going to be her sort of pet. He's the new monkey. And sex toy, really. He's really just a boy toy for her to play with because their relationship is now turned sexual. So he's really in it now. But he's chosen to sort of go into this. My students often scream when she kisses him. It's great. It's such a great movie. I can't read my own handwriting here. Okay, I have no idea what that says. I'm just going to give it up. And of course, you immediately jump to the classic image of the older woman and the younger man, which is the pool boy. Usually the guy's cleaning the pool. But Joe Gillis climbing out of the pool. He's got patterned swim trunks on. Not super significant, but she likes patterned clothes like leopard print. So he's really like on her side again. And he's really given up. Okay, and they kind of hang out. He's got a coat that has a giant collar on it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He doesn't have the coat. She has this crazy coat with a giant collar, and they go out together, and she's got these huge drama things that she wears, and she's totally amazing. He's sort of given into her power. There's a bit, by the way, where he goes to buy her cigarettes from the store and bumps into Artie and Betty again. And Artie says, where have you been keeping yourself? The joke in that scene is that he hasn't been keeping himself, because he means keeping himself. When he says, where have you been keeping yourself? He means, where have you been living? But keeping yourself also means paying for yourself. If you're a kept man, someone else is paying for you. And so the joke is, he's not keeping himself. Someone else is keeping him as basically a pet and sex toy. Cool. There's also a shot, too, where Joe is talking to Betty. And then in the background, you see Max looming. And Max is between them. Joe is here, and Betty's here, and Max is like way in the background, but between them. It's a little camera shot that emphasizes the way his relationship with Gloria Swanson or Norma Desmond is the break between them. They can't get together because that's what the movie becomes about. Is we're kind of rooting partly for Betty's such a sweetheart. We almost want them to get together. They feel like a more appropriate couple. They seem to get along so well. They seem so happy with her. Yeah, all right, we'll pick it up in the next video.